Parshas Bamidbar. So let's put down the svarim. It's not a coincidence that Parshas Bamidbar is always read before Shavuos. It's always before Shavuos. So there's something in Parshas Bamidbar that Hashem is trying to tell us to get us ready for receiving the Torah, for Kabbalas Torah. So what happens in Parshas Bamidbar? Right? It's very, very simple. What happens in Parshas Bamidbar is a major section of the parsha is the fact that Hashem commanded Moshe Rabbeinu to count the Jewish people, right? To count the Jewish people, and that counting the Jewish people, it takes a long time, right? So he counts everyone individually, right? Each one by their name, by their parents' name, and so on. Then the pasuk goes on to say that once Moshe Rabbeinu counted the Jewish people, and we have an accounting of who the people are, then the pasuk goes on to describe how the Jewish people camped in the desert. The parsha of the Degalos, of the flags of the camps of the Jewish people, and the way the Jewish people camped was the following arrangement. You had the Mishkan, right, the tabernacle in the center, right, and the Levium immediately surrounding the Mishkan, and then around the Levium you had the different Degalim. You had the different tribes. The different tribes, but with the Degel. Degel's a flag. The different flags, however you want to describe this. The way it was that basically 3 Shvatim to each side, right? 4 sides, north, south, east, west, times 3. Basic arithmetic, it's 12 Shvatim. There you go. So 3 Shvatim to each side, and each camp had their Degel. Degel Machne Ruvain, Degel Machne Yehuda, and so on. That's the way the Jewish people camped. So it's an amazing thing. I'll just read you a few lines from Rav Tzaddik. He says the following thing: imagine such a thing with your mind's eye how the Jewish people were counted by Moshe Rabbeinu. You have Moshe Rabbeinu, you had Aaron HaKohen standing there, all the Nesiim, and every single man, woman, child go one by one. Every man between 20 and 60 and so on, passing before the eyes of Moshe Rabbeinu and the eyes of Aaron HaKohen one by one, and they're counting them, saying who they are, where they come from, and so on. Listen to what Rav Tzaddik says, an unbelievable thing. Shekol echad, he says, listen to what Rav Tzaddik says. Look at what the Jewish people merited by being counted by Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron HaKohen. Shekol echad hizkir shmai v'shem aviv. Every single Jew goes before these 2 great people, says their name and says their father's name. L'fnei Kadosh Baruch Hu, they're passing before Hashem, l'fnei Moshe, and in front of Moshe Rabbeinu. He says, by just being counted by Moshe Rabbeinu, by being looked at by Moshe and Aaron, and saying who they were, that I am Reuven ben Shimon, and Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron can acknowledge that. Says Rav Tzaddik, they merited mamish anu neshama. Every single Jew that experienced that left that experience a different person. That's what he says. So what's the inyan of counting the Jewish people? What's that inyan? So the Zohar Kadosh says in the beginning of this parsha the following thing. Why was it that all of a sudden now Hashem decides to count the Jewish people? So the Zohar says the following thing. Kivan da'araisu mishkana eskumu. Once the Torah was given, right? Once the Torah was given, and the Mishkan was built, right? Because the Mishkan, the construction of the Mishkan and all the details of the Mishkan was basically the second half of Shmos and the entire Sefer Vayikra, right? So once that's finished, right? Once we're finished with the discussion of the Mishkan and all its laws, the Torah was given, and we have the Mishkan. Says the Zohar Kadosh, the Zohar Kadosh says, Bo kuchabrichu l'mifkad. Hashem now chose to count Chele Daraisa, the legions of Torah, the Jewish people who are considered the army of Torah. Kama chaylin inun daraisa, how many foot soldiers are there in the army of Torah? The kama chaylin inun de Mishkan, and how many foot soldiers are there in the army of the Mishkan? That's what he says. So the Zohar Kadosh is telling us that what's taking place in the counting of the Mishkan is not just Stam. Hashem wanted to know how many Jews there are. Hashem doesn't need that. What was taking place was in the counting of the Jewish people. This was an appointment. Hashem was basically bringing us into His army, into His service, and every single Jew has two aspects of this military service. There's Chele Daraisa, there's the fact that we're part of the army of Torah, and there's Chele de Mishkana, and there's something called the army of the Mishkan. And already, without saying anything, we already see this connected to Moshe and Aaron, right? Moshe and Aaron are the ones that are commanded to count the Jewish people. Moshe Rabbeinu is the general of the army of Torah, and Aaron HaKohen is the general of the army of the Mishkan. And every Jew that passes in front of their gaze and says their name and their father's name is now being absorbed into these 2 armies. That's what the Zohar Kadosh says. So obviously this is something, if the Zohar says it, it's coming from a deep place. But for people like us, what does this mean practically? So I want to talk about something which is very pashut. I want to keep it very, very simple tonight, because I think that in order to prepare ourselves for Shavuos, we have to keep it simple. Listen, the pasuk says, Shalom Melech said in Kehelas that Re'isis kol shenasa tachas hashemesh. I see everything that goes on in life. So kol hevel v'ros ruach, and it's all a bunch of waste of time. That's what Shlomo said. Most of life, right? I mean, now we're all within the category of, I guess, adults, right? We could say that officially. So, as adults, or as people that, are supposed to be adults, what most of life, as we know, is really a waste of time. Not much a waste of time. Whether it's school, whether it's work, it's the health insurance, it's raising kids, groceries, waiting, getting stuck on the Van Wyck, whatever. Yeah, right? Hopefully not. So, most of life is mamash hevel v'ros ruach. Mamash a waste of time. So there's two different types of people. One type of person, the saddest, the mamash rachmanis, is someone that doesn't bother him. Right? There are types of people that are so lost. They are so disconnected from what life is supposed to be about, that the fact that their entire lives, or 90% of their lives, is being occupied by complete, frivolous, meaningless things, it doesn't even bother them. Now that's the saddest thing. That's mamish sad. For such a person, it's a big avodah to wake a person up, to get him to realize that there's something missing, that life is, the way he's living is meaningless. That's a difficult thing. But I think for the most part, definitely us here, people that are trying to become better Jews, I think there's no question we're not in that category. We're in the category, hopefully, of people that when we spend so many hours, countless hours of just nothing, of hevel v'ros ruach, it bothers us. Right? I think that's what we want to be. We want to be people that itaka bothers us. The life is so mamish empty. Like you go through everything's a thing, right? Everything takes energy in this world, and it's just such a waste of time, just a waste of energy, a waste of just everything. You wake up in the morning and you want to serve Hashem, you want to become a better Jew, you want to sit and learn daven, whatever it is, and you get a text that now there's something I have to go take care of this, whatever it is, and now I'm stuck for the next 5 hours, going to the city and dealing with all sorts of stuff. It's just not. It takes its toll on us. So some people use that as motivation to go to Eretz Yisrael, right? Just to move to Eretz Yisrael and just try to escape it all, which is halavai. But for the rest of us that aren't so smart and we stay here, so it's rachmanis. It's a big rachmanis. So what do we do? What does such a person do that's stuck in that world of hevel v'ros ruach? That's like Shlomo Melech, that sees everything that's happening in life and sees it's all stupid and a waste of time. How do you do such a thing? Where's the escape? Right? We say in Adonai Olam, for example, every day, we say Adonai Olam Hashem Malach, we describe how great Hashem is and so on, and then we say V'hu Nisi, Umonoisli, Hashem is my escape. What does that mean that Hashem is my escape? It means what we're saying in Adonai Olam is the following thing. We're saying that life, we recognize life is 90% is a waste of time. But there has to be some escape. There's got to be some window, some escape hatch, some emergency exit where we could just get out of the whole crazy, rat race and just the miserable emptiness of life, and to escape to something meaningful. What is that escape? What's that escape? So, plain and pashut, the escape is Torah. That's the escape. Now, for those people, what's also very sad is if someone never really, got involved in learning at all, never really spent any time learning, or never really took learning seriously, or took Torah seriously, it's very hard to understand what I'm about to describe. But I think for all of us, this is something we could all appreciate. You ever go a day, or whatever, a certain amount of time which is beyond what you usually do, where you're not able to learn, right? Sometimes it's your own fault, sometimes it's not your fault. Whatever it is, you go a certain amount of time, and you feel, whether you recognize it or not, you feel like you're rotting inside. There's something wrong. And then you finally have the time, 15 minutes, whatever it is, to open up a sefer. Whatever the case, it's a chumash, whatever it is that gets you going. You open up a sefer, and it brings your neshama back to you. All of a sudden, you can't explain it. You can't explain why this is happening, but all of a sudden, you feel more at ease? Why is it that ask someone who, after working a whole day, really working hard a whole day, comes home and he tries to, whether it's daf yomi, whatever, chumash, shnaimik, whatever it is, he's opening up a sefer, he's falling asleep, right? He's not falling asleep because he's bored, he's falling asleep because he just can't keep himself awake. So you ask him, why, what are you making yourself crazy for? Just go to bed, right? So what he'll tell you, maybe he won't be able to explain or to articulate why is it that he's not going to sleep. But why he's not going to bed is because there's something inside of him, that feeling of hevel v'rus ruach, that feeling of like life is just empty and meaningless, the escape, that he's looking for an escape, and that escape is learning. That's the way it is. This is what the Rishonim said, that throughout Jewish history, life has been very, very tough. It's a lot easier now than it used to be, right? Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. What did Jews do to sort of like zone it all out, right? So Goyim, Baruch Hashem, Hashem gave a gift in the world to the Goyim called sports, right? No, it's a big bracha. It's a very big bracha. Can you imagine if there was no, we know what historically what the Goyim were involved in if there was no outlet, right? So Baruch Hashem, there's such a thing. So you can have a guy whose whole life, he's working whatever, 9 to 5, a long, long day. To get to one thing, to have an escape, to release himself, just to escape into whatever the case may be, whether it be, whatever, hopefully it's a good team. That's the hope. That's the hope, that it's a good team. But a Jew, throughout Jewish history, the escape hatch, the window, the oxygen that the Jewish person has sort of like, just to relieve himself, to get out of this whole craziness, was learning. That's the way it was. We have so many stories like this. There's like a famous Maisa with the Nitziv. The Nitziv from, Nitziv was one of the yeshivas of Volozhin, the famous yeshiva of Volozhin. So there was one time it happened that there was a fire that broke out in Volozhin, and the Beis Medrash was burnt down. So obviously it was a big tragedy, and it took some time to not just raise the funds, but to build a new building. So in the meantime, the Nitziv had he had a decent sized house. It wasn't anything major, but he decided, he doesn't want the yeshiva to disband. So what he decided was that the yeshiva will move into his house. So the top floors was the yeshiva, hundreds of guys learning in his house, and the bottom floor was for his family. So sometime one person asked the Nitziv, he said, "I don't understand, Rebbe, how do you sleep at night?" Right? Because it's famous that in Volozhin they had a 24-hour shift of learning, right? Guys were constantly, there was different shifts. Some guys would sleep during the day and learn at night and so on. So 24/7 there's learning and noise in his house. There's banging out, there's things going on, right? So how does a Nitziv sleep? So famously the Nitziv answered, he said, "I don't understand. Let's say you're Mr. Heinz, right? Heinz ketchup. I don't know if there is one anymore. There used to be probably, I'm sure, at some point, Mr. Heinz. So Mr. Heinz has a factory, right? And I'm sure, and let's say he lives right next door to the factory. Now, to make Heinz ketchup, I'm sure to crush all his tomatoes, you need it makes a lot of noise, yeah? So you could ask Mr. Heinz, how do you sleep at night? Your factory's making so much noise. So what's he going to tell you? Making noise. What are you talking about? That it gives me so much happiness when the noise is going on, because if the noise stopped, that's when I wouldn't be able to sleep, right? Because if the noise stops, it means I'm not making money, and that's the end of my life. So this is the same thing. If the yeshiva were to stop making noise, that's when I can't sleep. When it's making noise, that's unbelievable. That's my chiyas. This was the lifeblood of the Jewish people. It wasn't just a question of it's enjoyable to learn. It's the only way out of the emptiness of life. There's so many stories like this. There's another mice with the Baal Tanya, for example. Baal Tanya had a certain sefer a manuscript that he wrote that for whatever reason he didn't want to publish. He felt the world wasn't ready, whatever the case may be. So, in fact, in order to stop his sons and his chassidim from sneaking a peek, so he bound it on both sides. Right? He printed it, but it was held on both sides. And he actually made a cherem. He said, anyone who disobeys my command to open this and to read it, I'm officially putting excommunication on him in this world and the next. That's what the Baal Tanya said. So the Maisa goes, at one time there was another fire that broke out in his house, and unfortunately his library burnt down, including that manuscript. And the Baal Tanya was very upset because he didn't remember the stuff that was in that anymore, and he never printed it. So he went to his son, the future Mittler Rebbe, the future Lavish Rebbe, and he asked him. He said, "Nur B'Doiv Ber, tell me a vart that you saw in that manuscript." So he's like, "What are you talking about? I wouldn't look at it. The Rebbe made a cherem. I'm not going to lose my Olam Haba." He said, "Really?" He said, "I could have sworn that for the love of Torah you would have given up your Olam Haba. That's. I'm very surprised that you didn't look into it. There's such a thing like Torah, for the love of that, just give up everything." There's another mice they say. There's a mice they say with. Rav Levine. Bar Levine was one time the tzaddik, the Bar Levine. So he was one time by a wedding, and he was going to a wedding, and this wedding was on top of a mountain somewhere, whatever it is. He was already an older person. There was a dirt road to walk from the bottom to the top. So as he's going, he's schlepping along. He's an older man. It's hard for him to go. Meanwhile, there's like a little yeshiva bach, whatever, goes over to him and starts saying shalom aleichem and so on. And Rabbi Levine starts asking, what yeshiva do you go to? You're here, okay, who's your Rebbe? Very nice. What are you learning? And they start talking about what the kid's learning and so on. And by the time it's over, they're at the top of the mountain. So Rabbi Levine said, you see what Torah could do to a person? If we weren't talking about learning, there would be no way how I could get up this hill. We're talking about Torah, we're involved in Torah, it's the you get up, you could go from the bottom to the top of the mountain with ease. That's what Torah was. That's what Torah is. It's the way, it's to get out of all these things. Now why is Torah like that? So just to deepen our understanding a little bit, why is Torah like that? Why is it that by learning, a Jew is able just to feel life again, to sort of get out of the rat race of life? So listen just a few lines from the Baal Tanya. Baal Tanya writes in Sefer Tanya, he says the following thing. It's very, very powerful words. He says like this. The Baal Tanya says when a Jew is involved in learning, whatever level of learning it might be, whether it's a pasuk chumash, like I said, a gemara, kisari, whatever the case may be, whatever learning you're doing, this is a unity between you and Hashem that is wondrous, that is not found in any other way. And there's nothing that can even be compared to this level of connection in the physical world. To be completely one with Hashem, there's nothing that could be compared to that experience when a Jew is learning. In other words, what the Baal Tanya is telling us is that, listen, why is this world heavy versus ruach? Guy's, let's say, involved in business, right? He's involved in business, he's going to work. Mamash empty. He feels himself like losing it, like rotting inside this, everything's going away. But now when he opens up a Shulchan Aruch, right? He opens up a Shulchan Aruch, or Mishnah Berurah, and the Shulchan Aruch is telling you what to do in the business deal that you just were involved in. So what the Baal Tanya is telling us that when that happens, when that experience takes place, it's an unbelievable thing, because what's happening at that moment is that in that emptiness that you just experienced and you're just involved in all day long, when you learn the halachas of that experience, what's happening is that you're tapping into the unbelievable wisdom of Hashem that's contained in that thing. You're escaping from the smallness of that event and tracing, and you're elevating yourself, and you're returning to the spirituality that's contained in that event. That's what Torah is. What Torah is the way of giving a Jew the eyes, of seeing through the shallowness of the events that we're involved in, and giving you a little bit of a breather, giving you some oxygen to break through the emptiness of that event. So for example, you go to the bathroom. Going to the bathroom is nothing. What's going to the bathroom? But when you know the halachas of going to the bathroom, then all of a sudden what Hashem is doing is that He's taking that event, that action, which is going to the bathroom, which seems meaningless, and what He's doing is He's giving you a window into what's contained in that event. And no longer is that event meaningless. Right? When you're learning it, now you're able to escape from the smallness of that event. You understand? It gives a Jew the ability of going beyond the smallness of this world and connecting to something much, much more infinite. Much more infinite. And the reason why Torah is so very, very much involved in physical life is because that's what Torah is trying to do. It's trying to give us an escape. If the escape that Torah was giving us had nothing to do with where we are, then there's no way for us to leave this place and to get to the exit. The Torah that Hashem gave us, which is the exit, has to be connected to where we're stuck in, right? Because we're stuck in this physical world, so the Torah said, okay, Hashem said, I'm going to give you something to allow you to escape from this physical world a little bit. And that's the Torah. So the Torah is involved in physical things, but it's the escape hatch. It allows us to get out of it. This is what it means, the army of Torah. When the Jewish people are counted, and we're called the army of Torah, of Moshe Rabbeinu, this is what it means, the army of Torah. It means people that are constantly able to at the same time be in this world, but always to be able to escape it. That's the beauty of Torah. This is what it means how the Jewish people camped in the desert. What does it mean? I mentioned before how they camped, right? The Mishkan, which housed the Aron, right? The 10 Commandments, right, which is Torah itself, was in the center, and everyone else camped around it. That's how the Jewish people camp. That's how we have Menucha. The way the Jewish person has Menucha, how we always have Menucha, and we continue to have Menucha, is only if we're connected, and the center of our lives is Torah. Plain and pashut. It's only because otherwise life is mamish one long traffic jam. That's what life is. Otherwise you're stuck in the Van Wyck for the entire life. If you without Torah being in the middle of giving you that ability of getting out of it, of being able to be in traffic, but somehow listen to a shir and whatever, they're not in traffic anymore. That's the only way out. Now the problem with this is that if this was the only army that we were in, then it would seem that we're all living a double life. That's what it would seem. Because on the one hand, we have this physical world which is completely empty, which is completely silly, which is meaningless, and then we have Torah on the other hand, which is the escape, which gives us the ability of floating into some divine airspace which is beyond all limits and so on. That's a double life. So there's a letter that someone actually wrote to Rav Hutner. When an old student of Rav Hutner wrote the following thing, he said that, I was in yeshiva, and now I'm out of yeshiva, and now I'm working, and I still learn, a couple hours a day, whatever it is, and a little bit in the morning, a little bit at night, I still, kaveh and do daf yomi and so on, and I feel like I'm living a double life. He said, I feel like, when I'm working, I'm involved in work, and when I'm learning, finished. Like, I don't feel this collision. I feel like I'm living a double life. That's what he wrote to Rav Hutner. So Rav Hutner said, I'm very disappointed in you. I'm very disappointed in you. He said, you learned by me for so many years, and you think that by learning and working, you're living a double life. He said, you're making a big mistake. Learning and working is not a double life. It's an enriched life. That's what he said. That's the way he said. It's not a double life. It's an enriched life. What does that mean? So what does it mean to be the army? We understood until now, what does it mean to be in the army of Torah? In the army of Torah means that a person is able to at any moment escape. At any moment, just to let go of all stupidity, let go of all silliness of this world, and just escape it all. Just throw himself in learning, open up a sefer, and everything else falls by the way. So that's what it means the army of Torah. What does it mean the army of the Mishkan? So this is the more difficult thing. This is the more difficult thing. Let me read you a few lines from Rav Nosson Breslover. He says the following thing. He says, Kizeh kol adam. The truth is, as difficult as this might sound, the real reason why we're all here, what's the tachlis? Why is it that Hashem created us? It's kedei liyachid ulakasher kol ha'olam es yachad. It's for one purpose. The one purpose of creation is to uplift and to unite all worlds back to Hashem. All worlds. Means the spiritual world and the physical world. Everything, the lower world and the higher world, has to be ultimately coming back to Hashem. That is the true reason for creation. The higher point, the lower point in a person's life. A person therefore has no choice but to bind the most physical things that a person is thrown into against his will, right? Like the Mishnah says in Ovid, it's against your will that you're born, right? We never asked to come down here. We were sent down here against our will. But says once we're here, we should know that the purpose is in order to uplift and to connect and to bind the physical world, which is the most physical of all things, to connect it all back to Hashem. The tachlis is not to escape. That's the point. The tachlis is not to escape physical life in learning. You have to do that once in a while, there's no question. Every single one of us is part of the army of Torah, and we need that escape hatch. But the true purpose of creation is to be part of the army of the Mishkan. What does the Mishkan mean? The Mishkan means building Hashem's house down here in this physical world. That's what it means, the Mishkan. Every single one of us is therefore involved in two armies. There's one army which is the army of Torah, which is the ability to escape. Not to somehow connect physical life back to Hashem, to escape physical life. That's necessary. If a Jew doesn't have that, then you can't even start. But once you have that in your back pocket, you have the ability every once in a while, and you learn every day, and you do what you can to escape, to daven and to learn, to escape physical life, then you now have the strength to do the other mission, the other aspect of your army, which is the army of the Mishkan, which is to connect Hashem to physical life. It means that when a Jew is connected to Torah properly, not that you can learn Torah, but you don't have to be connected to it properly. If a Jew is connected to Torah properly, then when a Jew after learning, after escaping, and after tasting of the higher world, then you go to work. right? And you make money, then the tachlis is not that part of your life should be empty and shallow and feeling missing of tachlis. The opposite. You go to work l'shem shemayim. You keep the halachas that you learned about in Shulchan Aruch. You work properly. You make a kiddush Hashem and so on. You make money and you give tzedakah with that money. You support a Jewish family with that money. You send your kids to yeshiva with that money. And now everything is a mitzvah. And all that physical effort and all that physical involvement that you suffered through, all the traffic jams, all the business deals that didn't go through, everything that you had to deal with, all the classes that you had to take, whatever it is, it's all now part of the Melechas HaMishkan, of building a Mishkan for Hashem in this world. That's what it is. Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron together, we need both. That's the tachlis. And he goes on to say, Ki kol avedas hesach. Says Rav Nosson, every single Jew is sent down here to find lost objects for Hashem. Every single neshama has things connected to their neshama that we have no idea about. Every neshama has a mission to accomplish, has some corner of this world that's a lost object to Hashem, that our job is to find that. That's our job. So therefore, if a Jew tries to convince himself that he's going to spend his entire life trying to escape physical life by only committing to the army of Torah, as beautiful as that is, he's also missing the point. The point is to have both, to have the army of Torah and the army of the Mishkan together. There's an unbelievable thing. I mentioned before how the Jewish people camped, right? That the center of everything was Torah. The menucha, the camping of the Jewish people was around the Torah. And the pasuk says, "Kasha yachnu ken yiso," that just as the Jewish people camped, that's how they traveled as well. So there's machlokas in the Yerushalmi. There's machlokas in Yerushalmi Eruvin, how exactly the Jewish people traveled. One opinion is that they traveled mamish the same way they camped. That square shape that they were camped in, that's exactly how they traveled, as that moving square. The other opinion was no, they camped in a square, but when they traveled in a straight line. So one degel would go first, the other one after, and so on. But they wouldn't travel as this cohesive unit. Now, obviously, that's a machlokas in reality of how exactly they traveled. But in concept, in hashkafa, what we see from that, they're both correct. Because what does it mean to travel? The traveling of the Jewish people and the camping of the Jewish people were manifestations of these two armies. When the Jewish people camped, that meant the army of Torah. That meant the Jewish people's ability not to travel and not to conquer territory for Hashem. That's to camp, to set, to rest, to escape. That's what Torah means. And the way they camped, everybody agrees, the way a Jew camps is by completely swallowing up Torah in himself, by completely connecting and making Torah the center of his life. That's how a Jewish person camps. That's how a Jewish person escapes the emptiness of life. But now how do you travel? There's a time of Hashem where Hashem wants a Jew to stop and to rest, and there's a time where every single Jew has to travel and has to conquer and has to build a Mishkan for Hashem. So how do you do that? So there's no question, it's in both these ways. If a Jew travels only in that formation where the Torah is in the middle, then he's always going to be living a double life. He's never going to feel like somehow his ability of actually conquering physical life for Hashem is ever happening. On the other hand, if a Jew only goes in a straight line and doesn't have Torah as the center, he's going to be lost in this world. The way to do it is both. It's to travel in a straight line, but also have the Torah in the center of your life. To always be able to, at the same time, escape, and at the same time as well, to conquer and to find godliness in physical life. To work l'shem shemayim, to eat l'shem shemayim, to go to school l'shem shemayim, to make a kiddush Hashem, and so on. Very positive. That's what a Jew means. That's what it means to be a Jew. To have both these aspects. Now, there's an amazing thing, just to deepen our understanding of this a little bit. In the Kabbalah Svarim, there's a very, very big inyan as far as the arrangement of the Jewish people, how they camped. As I said, there was 3 shvatim to each side. The significance of that, I'll just tell you quickly. The significance of that is that that basically is a computation of the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. And the name Yud Kei Vav Kei is 4 letters, Yud Kei Vav Kei, and the Yud Kei Vav Kei can be letters can be rearranged in 12 different ways. 12 different ways, corresponding to the 12 different shvatim. And now the way you rearrange the letters, I don't have a smart board or something to show you guys, but if you just imagine, afterwards you can check it by yourself. If you rearrange Yud Kei Vav Kei in 12 different ways, 3 of the ways, it basically could be divided into 4 different sections. One way of formulating letters is 3 different computations, all starting with the letter Yud. Another 3 different computations starting with the letter Hey. Another 3 computations starting with the letter Vav. Another 3 computations starting with the letter Hey. In other words, so the 12 different arrangements of Yud Kei Vav Kei, which represents the 12 Shvatim, are divided into 4 different parts, each one containing three formulations. That's what it means at the Golem. The encampment of the Jewish people, 3 on each side, basically 4 units of 3. That's Yud Kei Vav Kei expressing itself in this world through the Jewish people.
But wouldn't that make 3 and the 3 that started with the hay?
No,
6 of them are.
No, if you go through it, I don't have time to go through it now.
It
But
might be pronounced differently each one.
yeah, there's different ways. There's different ways of doing it. Yeah, because the hays are different. The first and second hay are very 2 different worlds. So, in other words, what does that mean? What does that mean? Yud Kei Vav Kei, what does Yud Kei Vav Kei mean? Yud Kei Vav Kei, Hashem has a lot of names, but Yud Kei Vav Kei means, on a very, very simple level, it means that aspect of Hashem which is way beyond physical life. Yud Kei Vav Kei means past, present, future. It's above it's the escape hatch. That's what Yud Kei Vav Kei means. Yud Kei Vav Kei means that this world is the world of finite details, of past, present, future, and so on. Right? Of time and space. Yud Kei Vav Kei means above time and space. The Jewish people camping, which was the embodiment of Yud Kei Vav Kei and all of its different computations, means that when the Jewish people camp, that means that there is an ability of a Jew of connecting to Yud Kei Vav Kei, of that escape hatch, of that place that's beyond time and space. That's what it means to camp. On the other hand, there's another teaching from the Arizal. The Arizal taught that the letter Aleph is really broken down into 3 letters. There's the top Yud, the bottom Yud, and the Vav in the middle. The gematria of 2 Yuds and a Vav, right, is 26. The same gematria as Yud Kei Vav Kei. However, the Aleph, which is also Yud Kei Vav Kei, means something else. The top Yud and the bottom Yud with the Vav in the middle means that the job of a Jew is not to escape always. The job of a Jew is the army of the Mishkan, which means there's the bottom Yud, which means physical life. There's the top Yud, which means spiritual life, and there's the Vav in the middle that connects the 2. The job of a Jew, the job of a person, is to connect the bottom to the top. To live a life of physicality, and somehow find godliness within it, not to escape, but to find Ruchnius, to connect Ruchnius to Gashmias. And Rabbi Nachman talks about this as well, at great length. He says, therefore, the letter Aleph is the first letter of the word Adam, because that's what a human being is. The job of an Adam is to do this idea. So therefore, in a certain sense, we have 2 26s. You have Yud Kei Vav Kei, which means the army of Torah. The armor of Torah means that there's the ability of a Jew of taking Yud Kei Vav Kei and escaping physical life. But there's another 26. It's the same 26, but it's the same army of Hashem. It's just in a different way. Instead of having one army of escaping, which is the way the Jewish people camped, which is Yud Kei Vav Kei, there's the army of the Mishkan, which is the Aleph, which is the ability of a Jew of uplifting physical life back to Hashem. This is the meaning of what Moshe Rabbeinu was telling the Jewish people by counting them. Moshe and Aaron counting the Jewish people. This is why Parshas Bamidbar is an unbelievable hachana for Shavuos. Because when we were about to receive the Torah, we have to keep this in mind, that there's no such thing as a double life. There's no such thing as a double life. A Jew has to remember that at the same time, there's no question, we have the ability of Yud Kei Vav Kei, of escaping. But at the same time, that same Yud Kei Vav Kei, that same 26, has to manifest itself as well as the letter Aleph in our lives. We have to have Yud Kei Vav Kei, of the camping of the Jewish people, the army of Torah. We also need that also to manifest itself as the Aleph of that 26, of uplifting physical life back to Hashem. That never at all should a Jew feel at all that he's living a double life. This is difficult. This is very, very difficult because the world that we see with our eyes seems very much divided. That there's learning, there's davening, and there's going to work. But we have to be mechazik ourselves with this. There is no such division. We're all members of the army of Torah, and we're all members of the army of the Mishkan. Let me end off with a quick ma'aseh. This is I doubt that it's true, but it's just a cute story. There's a ma'aseh that goes that there was once a guy. I mentioned this in shul once. There was a guy that there was two guys, and they're both very poor, and their thing was they didn't have jobs, but every day, whatever it is, at a certain time they would go to Main Street, whatever it is, and they would collect money. Okay, so the ma'aseh goes at one time. Let's call him Bob. Bob is walking to the place that they usually go to, and all of a sudden he sees his friend Tom come out of shul, and he's wearing a yarmulke and everything. So Bob says to Tom, "What's going on? What are you doing?" So Tom says, "Listen, buddy, I don't know what to tell you. I realized that these Jews, they give stuff. All you do is you go to whatever time in the morning, 7:30 minyan, whatever it is. You go, you say the word tzedakah. I don't know what that means. You say the word tzedakah, they give you money. Okay, fine. Okay, good. So fine. That's what I'll do too. He goes to the store, buys yam kebab, comes next day, shachris, tzedakah. They give him money. Okay, fine, very nice. Fine. He goes like this a couple days. After a couple of days, he goes back to shul and he sees that there's another guy also tzedakah, and he's saying the words. He's saying tzedakah, ich bin a ger tzedek. I'm a ger. I'm a convert, and he's getting more money, right? Because we like gerim, right? So the guy was giving more money. So he said, I don't know what these words mean, but fine, whatever. Tzedakah, ich bin a ger tzedek, and he gets more money. Okay, great, Gavaldik. He goes like this for a couple of days. Then he goes back to shul and he sees another guy. Guy's saying tzedakah, ich bin ein Einikel from Baal Shem Tov. I'm a descendant of the Baal Shem Tov. I don't know what these words mean, but he's getting more money. So so the Bob says, I'm not an idiot, but so he goes to shul and he says, tzedakah, ich bin a ger tzedek, ein Einikel from Baal Shem Tov. Right? I'm a convert, I'm a descendant of the Baal Shem Tov.
Done.
A Jew has to make a decision. You can't be both. A double life is something that a Jew can't live. You can't be a ger tzedek and Einikel of Baal Shem Tov at the same time. It doesn't work. A Jew has to commit himself. You have to commit yourself. Are you going to be Hashem or not? And committing oneself to Torah is not that doesn't mean to not live a physical life. It means to live a physical life, to be part of both these armies. And when a person has that in his back pocket, he has his official card-carrying member of the army of Torah, the army of the Mishkan, he'll have a happy life. And he won't feel this contradiction in his life. He'll be able to have menuchas hanefesh. We should be very soon to feel that in our lives, to come to Shavuos properly, to feel to recognize that we are members of this army of Torah and Mishkan and so on. We should be very soon to feel that in our lives and to commit ourselves to Yiddishkeit in a proper, healthy way. And if enough of us do that, we'll be very soon to be Makabel Torah properly and build